My name is Sharon Taylor. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed love meant staying, no matter how much it hurt. Ethan and I had been together for 4 years. We met in college, bonded over sleepless nights in the art lab and cheap instant noodles. He was the wild creative, a freelance photographer with more ambition than stability. I was the planner, the one who made sure bills were paid, deadlines were met, and there was always food in the fridge. It worked, or at least I thought it did. I remember the early days vividly, his laughter echoing through my tiny studio apartment, his camera dangling from his neck as he'd say, "You make even ordinary light look cinematic." I loved him for seeing magic in chaos, but maybe that's where it started, me mistaking chaos for passion. As the years passed, our lives found a rhythm. I worked in UX design, 9 to 5 stability, while he chased unpredictable gigs that somehow always ended with me covering rent. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself love was about patience. But around 6 months ago, something shifted. Ethan became glued to his phone, smiling at messages he didn't want me to see. He started coming home late, smelling faintly of someone else's perfume. I tried to brush it off as stress from new projects, but deep down, a quiet dread grew roots. Then one night it stopped being quiet. He was in the shower when a message lit up on his laptop, plain as daylight. "Jake last night was amazing. Can't wait for round 2. The words blurred. I didn't click, didn't scroll, didn't need to. My hands trembled, but my heart was calm, like it had been expecting this all along. When he came out of the bathroom, I was setting the dinner table, 2 bowls of pasta, cooling in the dim kitchen light. "Hey," he said, towel draped around his neck, hair damp. "Smells good." "Ethan," I started, my voice even. "Who's Jake?" His smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "I saw your messages." I met his eyes. He said last night was amazing. A long pause, then that look, the half smirk he used when he thought he was smarter than everyone else. "Okay, first off," he said, sitting down, "this isn't what you think. Then tell me what it is." He leaned back in his chair like a lecturer explaining philosophy to a naive student. "It's not cheating, Sharon. It's polyamory. You're just too possessive to understand." For a second, I thought he was joking. Then I saw the seriousness in his eyes, the arrogance. "Polyamory." I repeated slowly. "You're in a relationship with me, but sleeping with someone else, and I'm supposed to call it growth." He sighed. "It's not about sleeping with someone else. It's about connection. My therapist's been helping me explore my needs. Monogamy is restrictive. Jake and I have something natural. It doesn't take away from us. It expands love." "Expands," I echoed, tasting the word like poison. "And when were you planning to expand this conversation to include me? You wouldn't get it." He swirled his wineglass, not meeting my eyes. "You're still stuck in outdated ideas of love. True connection isn't ownership. And sneaking behind my back isn't honesty." He rolled his eyes. "I didn't tell you earlier because I knew you'd react like this, defensive, controlling. You always have to be in charge." That word controlling stung. The same word I used on myself every time I made sure rent was paid or groceries were stocked. "So let me make sure I'm hearing this," I said softly. "You've been sleeping with Jake. You didn't tell me. And now that I found out, you're calling it self-discovery." "Yes," he crossed his arms. "If you actually loved me, you'd support me. Jake understands that love isn't meant to be confined." I looked at him, really looked. The man I once held through anxiety attacks. The man who'd cried in my lap after losing a big client. He looked small now, hiding behind buzzwords and arrogance. "Ethan," I said quietly, "you didn't find freedom. You just found permission for selfishness." He scoffed. "That's the kind of close-minded thinking therapy is supposed to help you unlearn." My chest ached, not from anger, but from grief. Not just for the relationship, but for the illusion I'd protected. So I asked, "What now?" "You want me to find someone too, so we can call this fair." He shrugged. "If you want, I'm not stopping you. It's not about competition." "Then what is it about?" "It's about not being caged." Silence stretched. The sound of rain against the window filled the space between us. I nodded slowly. "Then I guess I'm not poly enough to stay." He blinked confused. "What?" I stood, picked up my untouched plate, and emptied it into the sink. My movements were calm, deliberate. "I'm done," I said simply. "You can explore all the freedom you want. Just don't expect me to stay here while you redefine betrayal as enlightenment." "Sharon, you're being dramatic." "No," I whispered, finally meeting his eyes. "I'm being free." I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just the quiet sound of keys sliding off my ring. He stared, mouth open, words forming, but never landing. I opened the door, the hallway light spilling into the room, making his face look almost boyish. Wait, he said softly. That's it. You're not even going to fight for us. What's there to fight for? I asked. You've already chosen. And I walked out. No cinematic music, no final hug, just the hum of the elevator descending my heart heavy, but certain. Later that night, I wrote in my journal. He called it polyamory. I called it betrayal dressed as philosophy. He said I was too possessive. Maybe I was of my dignity. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped into the quiet lobby and felt the staler just sense of peace, like the air itself had been waiting for me to breathe it again. As I stepped into the street, the rain had stopped. The pavement still shimmered, reflecting the city lights. That night I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it on the version of me who begged to be chosen. It's Stalerge how silence can feel heavier than shouting. The morning after I left Ethan, I woke up in a friend's guest room to the sound of traffic below. No arguments, no excuses, no half-asleep apologies. Just the buzz of the city, indifferent alive, and reminding me that life goes on. I didn't cry. Not yet. Grief comes later, I've learned, after the shock wears off, after the calm fades, and memory starts whispering again. That day I packed, methodically. I waited until I knew Ethan was at a photo shoot, then went back to our apartment. No, his apartment now, with 2 cardboard boxes and a purpose that felt surgical. Clothes first, books next, then the coffee maker I bought. When he said caffeine helped him think creatively. I left behind the mugs we picked out together. They belonged to a version of us that no longer existed. On the kitchen counter, I placed an envelope with a note. Rent's paid until the 30th. Good luck exploring. No signature, no heart, just closure in cursive. Before leaving, I glanced around the apartment one last time. The place looked smaller, like the walls had been holding their breath too long. There were still tiny traces of me everywhere, the throw blanket on the couch, my slippers by the door, but emotionally, I was already gone. When I locked the door behind me, it felt like sealing a tomb. I spent the next few weeks staying with my best friend Mara. She's the kind of person who says the truth like it's a life jacket, blunt, necessary, impossible to ignore. So he called cheating polyamory. She said one night eyebrows raised so high I thought they'd hit her hairline. Apparently I'm just too possessive to understand enlightened love, I replied, forcing a laugh. Mara handed me a mug of tea and sat across from me. Sweetheart, people who truly explore themselves don't drag others into their confusion. They journal, not justify. Her words hit deeper than she knew. I'd spent years trying to be Ethan's safety net, the stable one, the fixer, the patient girlfriend. I thought that made me strong, but maybe I'd confused endurance for love. Therapy became my anchor. I found a counselor named Dr. Rivera who specialized in relationship recovery. The first session she asked, "What do you want to get out of this, Sharon?" I stared at the floor for a long moment before answering. "I want to stop apologizing for expecting loyalty." She smiled softly like she'd heard those words too many times before. Healing wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. Morning runs replaced late-night arguments. My Spotify playlist changed from love songs to instrumental tracks that didn't need lyrics to make me feel something. I started painting again, nothing fancy, just strokes of color that looked like freedom. Work became my next form of therapy. My team at the design firm had no idea what I was going through, but deadlines have a way of saving people who need structure. My boss, a kind woman named Clara, noticed my focus. "You've been on fire lately," she said during a meeting. Maybe I finally stopped trying to fix things that weren't broken, I joked. A week later, she offered me the promotion I once declined, the one that required moving to another branch. This time I said yes. I moved into a smaller but brighter apartment closer to downtown. The view wasn't glamorous, just rooftops, birds, and neon reflections from a nearby cafe, but it was mine. For the first time in years, everything I owned fit into one space that no one could betray. Months passed quietly, but healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. Sometimes you circle back to the same pain, just at a higher level. There were nights when memories of Ethan would crawl back uninvited, his laughter at 2 a.m., the way he'd touch my hand absent-mindedly when editing photos, the smell of his cologne on cold mornings. Those memories hurt, not because I missed him, but because they reminded me of the version of myself who settled for less. I started writing in a journal every night. One entry read, "Maybe I was too loyal to someone who hadn't earned it." Another, "Healing feels like painting with broken brushes, messy, but still art." One Sunday morning, I bumped into an old mutual friend at the farmer's market. Her name was Claudia, one of Ethan's photography buddies. She hesitated before speaking. "Sharon, I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but Have you heard about Ethan? I froze, pretending to adjust my tote bag. No. Why? She lowered her voice. Jake, the guy he was with, dumped him. Apparently told people it was just fun and laughed when Ethan tried to make it serious. I felt something twist inside me, not joy, not pity, something in between. Claudia continued. He's been a mess. Lost a couple of clients, too. Keeps blaming everyone else. I nodded slowly. That sounds familiar. She winced. Sorry. I just thought you should know. Don't be, I said softly. Some lessons teach themselves. That night I lit a candle and sat by the window. The city buzzed below, tailorgers laughing, traffic humming, and I realized the world had kept moving even when mine had stopped. In the reflection on the glass, I didn't look like the same woman who'd begged Ethan to tell her the truth. I looked peaceful. I picked up my journal again and wrote, "Healing wasn't loud. It was the silence after chaos." Then I closed it, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Not to Ethan, not to anyone, just to the night." Maybe love isn't about holding on. Maybe it's about knowing when to let go before you lose yourself. The candle flickered once and went out like a scene ending exactly where it should. 3 months passed. By then, I'd stopped flinching at Ethan's name. It had become something like a ghost still existing somewhere but incapable of touching me anymore. My days had rhythm again. Morning coffee, design work, yoga after dark. The world had softened around the edges. But healing is sneaky. Just when you think you're done, life sends a whisper from the past. Mine came through Mara. She walked into my apartment one Friday evening, tossing her purse on the couch like she owned the place. "Don't freak out," she began. Never a good opening. I raised an eyebrow. "What happened, Ethan?" she said, lowering her voice. Apparently Karma's collecting receipts. I didn't ask for details right away, but she continued anyway because of course she did. He tried to make things official with Jake, the guy he cheated with. Jake laughed at him, told people Ethan was too emotional for a poly setup, then dumped him in public at some rooftop bar. I stared at her for a moment, waiting for anger, vindication, something, but instead I just felt nothing. "Wow," I said, simply sipping my tea. "That's unfortunate." Mara frowned. "You're seriously not gloating." "Come on, you earned at least a little satisfaction." I smiled faintly. "No, I just don't feel connected to it anymore, like watching a storm from inside a quiet room." She leaned back, studying me. "You've changed." I had to. The following week, the grapevine kept delivering updates, uninvited, unrelenting. Claudia texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, just FYI, Ethan lost 2 clients, missed deadlines, drama with his photographer circle. You didn't hear it from me." I didn't reply, but I stared at the message longer than I wanted to admit. There's a Staylorge sadness in watching someone self-destruct, even if they once hurt you. You recognize the same hands that once held yours, now reaching for nothing. That night, I sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights. I whispered to myself, "You can't save someone who mistakes drowning for swimming." My own life, meanwhile, began to blossom in quiet, ordinary ways. At work, I launched a redesign project for a major lifestyle brand. It was the kind of challenge I'd always wanted, complex, creative, demanding. The younger designers started calling me Coach Sharon, half joking, half serious. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen for who I was, not for who I supported. Clara, my boss, noticed too. During a team lunch, she said, "You've been glowing lately. New skincare routine or new peace of mind?" Maybe both, I laughed. But deep down, I knew it wasn't either. It was freedom. Still, healing isn't linear. Some nights I'd wake up at 3 a.m., my mind replaying old moments like broken film reels. Ethan lying on the couch with his camera on his chest, smiling up at me. His voice calling me Elle the way he'd trace patterns on my arm when he thought I was asleep. Memory is cruel, it never plays fair. It mixes tenderness with betrayal until you can't tell them apart. So I started writing letters I never sent. One of them read, "Dear Ethan, you called it enlightenment, but growth that hurts others isn't evolution, it's arrogance. You said I was possessive, but maybe I was just careful with my love. You should have been too. Anyway, I hope you find peace someday. I already have." Then I folded the letter, placed it in a box, and burned it on my balcony that night. Watching the ashes scatter over the street below felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. A few days later, Mara called again. Her tone was lighter this time. "You won't believe this," she said between laughs. Ethan's latest networking event got canceled because he showed up drunk and started ranting about monogamy being a social trap. I chuckled, but it wasn't mockery, it was irony. The same man who'd lectured me about freedom was now trapped in his own chaos. Sounds like he's still exploring, I said dryly. Yeah, exploring unemployment. We both laughed, but there was a quiet pause after. Mara softened her voice. You know, Lynn, I'm proud of you. You didn't go nuclear. You just walked away. That's the thing I said. When someone burns your house down, rebuilding quietly is the loudest revenge. One evening, I opened my social media account for the first time in months. Curiosity is dangerous, but closure sometimes hides in small doses of curiosity. Ethan's profile popped up in the suggested list, ironic. His latest post was a black and white photo of an empty chair with the caption, "Some people mistake freedom for loneliness." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I clicked mute and closed the app. I made myself a cup of tea, curled up on the couch, and let the quiet fill the room. Outside, the city hummed. Life moved forward. I wrote one last line in my journal before bed. Sometimes karma doesn't need witnesses. It just waits for silence. And that night, the silence felt merciful. 4 months after the breakup, I had stopped expecting the past to knock. But ghosts have terrible timing. They always show up when your life finally starts to make sense again. It began with a text from an unknown number. Hi Sharon, this is Erin, Ethan's sister. I know this is random, but he's been going through a rough time. He really regrets what happened. Could you maybe talk to him just once for closure? I stared at the message thumb hovering over the screen. For closure. The irony almost made me laugh. Closure wasn't a conversation. It was a boundary. Still, for a moment, I felt that familiar tug. The part of me that always wanted to fix things, to make sure everyone else was okay, even when I wasn't. Then I remembered how that story ended last time. I typed back one sentence. I wish him healing, but I'm not the person to help him find it. Then I hit block. 2 days later, a voicemail appeared. A male voice, hesitant. Hey, it's me, Ethan. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but God, I messed up. Jake was a mistake. He didn't understand what I was trying to do. None of it felt real. I thought polyamory would fix me, but it just broke everything. Can we talk? Please, just coffee. His voice cracked at the end. Once upon a time, that crack would have shattered me. Now it just echoed. I listened twice, then deleted it. No reply, no explanation, just silence. The next day I mentioned it during therapy. Dr. Rivera leaned forward slightly. What did it make you feel? Guilt, I admitted. But not for him, for how easily I almost answered. She nodded. That's natural. You're not tempted by him, Sharon. You're tempted by closure. The brain confuses them. So what should I do? She smiled. Exactly what you're already doing. Protect your peace. Don't open a door you worked so hard to close. A week passed. Just as I started to believe the haunting had ended, it shifted shapes. This time it came in the form of an email from a name that made my stomach clench. Subject from Ethan's mom. Dear Sharon, I know this might be awkward, but I'm reaching out as a mother. Ethan has been struggling since you two split. He's not sleeping or eating. He talks about you constantly, saying you were the best thing that ever happened to him. I think he's finally realized what he lost. Please, if you can find it in your heart, just talk to him. I truly believe you are good for each other. Love deserves a second chance. Marianne. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Love deserves a second chance. Did betrayal? I took a deep breath and typed my response carefully, each word deliberate. Dear Marianne, I appreciate your concern, but my chapter with Ethan is closed. I hope he finds healing, but that journey no longer includes me. Please don't contact me again about this. Respectfully, Sharon. Then I hit send, closed my laptop, and let the silence settle. That evening I met Mara for dinner. She could tell something was off the moment I sat down. Let me guess, she said, crossing her arms. He's back. Worse, I muttered. He sent his family. Her eyes widened. You're kidding. I wish I was. Mara exhaled, shaking her head. Classic manipulation move. When they can't control the narrative, they outsource the guilt. I laughed, half out of disbelief, half to keep from crying. It's working less and less. She clinked her glass against mine. That's called progress, babe. But that night, when I lay in bed, the messages replayed in my mind like background noise. The desperation in Ethan's voicemail. The pleading tone of his mother's email. I tried to ignore them, but empathy is a stubborn emotion. There was still a small part of me, the caretaker, the fixer, that whispered, maybe he really changed. But then another voice, colder and wiser, answered, maybe you just forgot how much it hurt. Days turned into weeks. I thought the storm had passed. Then one evening, as I was cooking dinner, my phone lit up with another unknown number. For some reason, I answered. Hello. A deep voice came through the speaker. Sharon, this is Mr. Miller, Ethan's father. My stomach tightened. How did you get this number? He hesitated. Aaron gave it to me. Look, I'll keep this short. Ethan's not doing well. He admits the poly stuff was nonsense. Says he was influenced by bad advice from his therapist. His mom's worried sick. You were good for him, Sharon. You grounded him. I leaned against the counter, keeping my tone calm. Mr. Miller, I appreciate you calling, but I can't be responsible for Ethan's choices anymore. He sighed. You're really going to throw away years over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated quietly. He built an entire ideology around betraying me. He went silent, then muttered, You sound cold. No, I said softly, just healed. Then I hung up. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my journal. I wrote, The past keeps knocking because it still believes I'm the same person who'd answer. I looked around my apartment, candles, flickering city lights bleeding through the curtains. It was peaceful, lived in mine. I closed the journal and whispered, Closure isn't owed, it's chosen. And for the first time in months, I fell asleep without dreams of him. It was a Wednesday night in early spring, quiet, uneventful, the kind of night that used to make me restless when I was still with Ethan. I was halfway through cooking dinner when I heard 3 slow knocks on my apartment door. At first, I thought it was a neighbor. The building was small, friendly enough, but then silence. No second round of knocking. Just the faint shadow of someone standing behind the frosted glass. My pulse quickened. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Ethan. My hands went cold. He looked thinner eyes, hollow hair messy, like he hadn't slept in days. He was holding something, a paper bag, maybe takeout, and staring down at the floor. I considered not opening. Every instinct told me not to. But closure doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it arrives in the same form as the pain that made you stronger. I opened the door halfway, keeping the chain locked. Sharon, he said softly, like my name was something fragile. Can we talk? My voice was steady but distant. What are you doing here, Ethan? He lifted the bag slightly. I brought your favorite pho from that place on Main. I remembered you said it helped when you couldn't sleep. I almost laughed at the irony. You think soup can fix what you broke? He flinched. No, I didn't know what else to do. There was a long silence, heavy but familiar. He looked down at his shoes, then back up, his voice trembling. I messed up, Sharon. Everything. Jake, the whole Polly thing, it wasn't real. I thought it made me enlightened, but it was just me trying not to feel small. He laughed at me when I tried to make it official. Said I was clingy. Said I used therapy words like armor. I didn't respond. I just watched him unravel. I lost clients, he continued. My friends stopped calling. Even my sister said I pushed everyone away. And I know it's my fault. I know I hurt you. His voice cracked. I can't sleep knowing you hate me. I stared at him through the small gap in the door. I don't hate you, Ethan. I just don't care enough to. His eyes widened, the words hitting harder than a slap. He swallowed. That's worse. It's honest. He stepped closer, desperation creeping into his tone. Sharon. Please, can't we just start over? I'll do monogamy. I'll go to therapy again. I'll change. I swear. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You don't need to promise me things you should have promised yourself. He frowned. You're being so cold. You used to care about people. About me. That was before I learned the difference between caring and caretaking. His jaw tightened. So that's it. After everything we went through, you just closed the door. I nodded once. Yes. Because that's what healed people do. For a moment, the hallway light flickered. His face twisted not in sadness, but anger. You're really going to act like you're better than me, he snapped. Like you didn't have your flaws, too. You were controlling, Sharon. You needed everything to fit your perfect plan. Maybe that's why I felt suffocated. I met his eyes calmly. If responsibility feels like suffocation, then you weren't ready to breathe beside me. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. The silence between us was thick, final. Goodbye, Ethan, I said softly. I closed the door slowly, the chain clinking like punctuation at the end of a long, painful sentence. He stayed there for a moment. I could hear his uneven breathing, the faint shuffle of his shoes against the floor. Then 3 hard knocks. Sharon, he shouted, voice cracking. You can't just walk away like I'm nothing. My heart pounded, but I didn't move. After a minute, the sound of footsteps faded down the hall. The silence that followed was absolute. I sank onto the floor, my back against the door. For the first time in years, I didn't cry after an argument. There was no argument left to have. The air felt cleaner, the quiet heavier, but in a good way. Like peace finally had room to stretch. I looked at the untouched dinner on my stove and laughed under my breath. The pho he brought sat outside the door, cooling just like the love I once thought would last forever. Later that night, I texted Mara. Me, he showed up. Mara, what, are you okay? Me, yes, I didn't let him in. Mara, I'm proud of you. That takes guts. Me, it didn't take guts. Just finally knowing I deserve quiet. Before bed, I stood by my window. The city glowed in patches, the sky bruised with clouds. My reflection looked different, calmer, sharper whole. I whispered into the glass. He once taught me fear disguised as love. I finally learned the difference. And with that, I turned off the lights and went to bed alone, but never lonely again. I thought that night at the door was the end of it. The way he looked standing there, small, broken, desperate, I assumed he'd finally understood what no meant. But people like Ethan don't let go of control easily. They just change the shape of it. A week passed before the messages started again, not from him directly, but from everyone orbiting him. The first came from a mutual friend, Claudia. Hey, Sharon, I know things ended badly, but Ethan's really struggling. He told us you won't even answer him. Could you at least give him closure? He's not the same person anymore. I read it twice, feeling a familiar tightening in my chest. Not from guilt, from recognition. The same old manipulation, repackaged in someone else's voice. I replied simply, Claudia, please don't get involved. I wish him healing, but I'm not reopening that door. She didn't respond. I blocked her the next morning. Then came the next one, an unknown number again. A woman's voice message, this time teary and breathy. Sharon, this is Kara, Ethan's friend. Please don't be heartless. He's breaking down. He told us you were the only person who made him feel safe. He just wants to talk. Don't punish him for trying to change. Heartless. That word hit differently now, not because I believed it, but because I remembered when I used to fear it. Back then, being kind was my compass, even when kindness meant erasing myself. Now kindness looked like silence. I deleted the message. But Ethan was never the type to stay quiet for long. A few days later, an email slipped through from a new address I didn't recognize. Subject, you owe me this. I hesitated, then opened it. Sharon, I can't believe you're ignoring everyone. My family says you're being petty and cold, just like I thought. You wanted me to change, and now that I have you disappear. Jake ruined me. I admitted I was wrong about the poly stuff. It was cheating. Okay, happy now. But you walking away without giving me a chance to make it right just proves you never cared. As much as you pretended, you don't get to act innocent. You had control issues too. I tried to grow, and you punished me for it. If you don't reply, I'll come find you in person. This isn't over. I stared at the screen, feeling the temperature in my chest drop from anger to disgust. He hadn't changed. He'd just shifted from guilt to blame, from confession to threat. I forwarded the email to Dr. Rivera and my friend Thomas, who worked in legal. Thomas called me that evening. Sharon, he's escalating. You've got documentation, right? Everything I said. Messages, emails, even the voicemail. Good. Keep them. But don't reply again. Not once. Silence is your armor. His tone was calm but protective. It grounded me. That night, rain lashed the windows like something was trying to get in. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop lighting the room, and wrote in my journal. It's Stalerge how abusers try to make peace sound like cruelty. They mistake boundaries for revenge. Then I closed the notebook and exhaled a slow, steady release. The world outside rumbled thunder echoing against the glass. I whispered to myself. Sometimes peace sounds like blocked notifications. The next morning, I went about my routine like nothing happened. Brewed coffee, fed my plants, logged into work. I'd learned that healing wasn't dramatic. It was the act of living normally despite someone else's chaos. But the chaos didn't stop trying to reach me. Later that week, an email popped up from Marianne, again Ethan's mother. I almost deleted it immediately, but curiosity won for a split second. Subject, be the bigger person. Sharon. I'm disappointed. I thought you had compassion. Ethan is hurting, and you're just ignoring him. He says he's tried everything, and you've been cruel. Love requires forgiveness. Don't let pride ruin something special. I closed the email and whispered aloud, love didn't ruin it. He did. Then I deleted it. That weekend, I finally let Mara read everything, the emails, the messages, the guilt campaigns. She sat at my kitchen counter, scrolling through my phone with a disbelieving shake of her head. Sharon, this isn't closure he's after, she said. It's control. He's trying to rewrite the ending so he doesn't look like the villain. I leaned back, sipping tea. Then I'll let him write whatever story he needs to. I'm not a character in it anymore. She smiled, eyes softening. You're stronger than you know. I looked out the window. The city lights shimmered against the rain-soaked glass, and I realized how true that was. That night, another unknown number tried calling. I watched the screen flash vibrate and go dark. I didn't answer. Instead, I put my phone face down, turned off the lights, and let the sound of the storm fill the room. No guilt, no fear, just calm. For the first time since leaving Ethan, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I had arrived. "You don't need to respond to prove you're strong," I wrote in my journal before bed. Silence is still a sentence, sometimes the most powerful one. And as I drifted to sleep, the rain slowed to a whisper, like even the world was learning to let go. 8 months after I walked out of Ethan's life, I stopped counting days. Healing had shifted from survival into habit mourning. Runs long hours at work dinners with friends that ended in laughter instead of tears. For the first time in years, peace felt normal. So when Mara invited me to her housewarming party, I didn't hesitate. "A few old faces will be there," she warned, but I didn't think much of it. The past felt too far away to matter. That night, the backyard glowed under strings of warm lights, the scent of grilled food and soft music wrapping around everyone. I was mid-conversation with some of Mara's coworkers when I saw him. Ethan. He was standing near the fence, clutching a drink, scanning the crowd like he didn't belong, which frankly, he didn't. His face was thinner, older somehow, like regret had been carving its signature into his skin. For a heartbeat, my stomach flipped. Then my brain caught up and calm settled in its place. He saw me and froze, then like a magnet started walking over. "Sharon," he said, voice soft but shaking. "Thank God you're here." I set my glass down carefully. "Ethan, can we talk, please? Just privately." "I don't think there's anything left to talk about." "Please," he repeated. "It won't take long." Mara caught my eye from across the yard. I gave her a small nod. "I've got this." He led me toward the fire pit, away from the chatter. The flickering flames painted shadows across his face. He looked both exhausted and desperate. "I've hit rock bottom," he began. "Jake was a user. He never cared about me. My friends left. My clients dropped me. I even moved back in with my parents for a while. Everything fell apart." I stayed silent. He took a shaky breath. "I've been in real therapy this time. Not that fake, self-justifying stuff. I know what I did. I used polyamory as an excuse to avoid intimacy. You were right. I see that now." I nodded once, still saying nothing. He stepped closer. "You were the only one who ever believed in me. I ruined it. I ruined us. I don't want to live like this anymore. Please, Sharon, I need you." I met his eyes calm and unwavering. "You don't need me, Ethan. You need accountability." He blinked confused. "What does that even mean?" "It means you're still talking about your pain, not the pain you caused. You want forgiveness without responsibility. That's not healing, that's convenience." His lips trembled, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "I'm trying." "Okay," I admitted. "I was wrong. Isn't that what you wanted?" "What I wanted," I said slowly, "was honesty before you destroyed what we had. What I want now is peace. And I already have it." He exhaled hard, stepping back. "You've changed." "I had to," I said. "You taught me what happens when you don't." The conversation should have ended there. It would have if he hadn't glanced behind me and seen her. Sarah, a woman from my hiking group, standing near the table with a gentle smile, waving when she caught my eye. Ethan's expression twisted. "Who's that?" "A friend," he scoffed. "You mean your new version of me? Someone quieter, easier to manage." I turned fully toward him, my voice low. "Sarah doesn't need managing. She knows who she is. And so do I." He laughed bitterly. "Wow. So this is it? You get to move on. Look happy, while I get stuck paying for one mistake." "One," I said softly. "You didn't just cheat Ethan. You dismantled trust and then tried to rename the rubble. That wasn't a mistake, it was a choice." His jaw clenched. "You think you're better than me now." "No," I said, steady as the firelight. "I just stopped needing to be understood by people who confuse freedom with selfishness." He stared at me, eyes, wet lips pressed tight, and for the first time I saw something behind the anger emptiness. "Fine," he said finally. "Be that way. But you'll regret this someday. No one else will ever care like I did." I smiled faintly. "You're right. No one else will ever make me forget myself the way you did." I turned and walked away, feeling the heat of the fire at my back and the cool wind on my face. Mara intercepted me halfway to the house, concern etched across her face. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than okay." From the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan watching me, isolated in the crowd. The same crowd that had once sided with him. Now they avoided his gaze, the truth finally visible to everyone. Sarah approached quietly, handing me a drink. "You handled that gracefully." "Grace isn't for him," I said. "It's for me." We clinked glasses. Later that night, as I sat by the fire after everyone had gone, I watched the last embers die down, tiny sparks disappearing into the dark. 8 months ago, I thought losing him would break me. Now it just felt like shedding an old skin. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, a habit I'd kept from journaling, and typed. He called it evolution. I called it escape. In the end, only one of us learned to grow. I smiled, closed my phone, and let the night swallow the last traces of smoke. Thanks for watching, my voice would say, if this were the video. If you've ever chosen peace over chaos, hit subscribe. Tell me where you're watching.